Hey gang, this video is titled An Olive Branch to Mutualists, and I titled it that because I come from a propertarian individualist perspective, and I've been told by several mutualists that this is incompatible with mutualism. But you know what? I'm not sure that it is. I think the two ideologies or philosophies are quite in sync with each other, and I'll make the case for it. I'll first preface that I've noticed that there are some mutualists who are just completely against, interest and rent to the point where they support using force to ban it, even between two consenting adults, etc. Whereas there are others who are more in line with what I've read directly from Proudhon that say, in a laissez-faire, free society, interest would just go down on its own. It would be natural. That would be the natural economic development. So, and I subscribe to that. I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think interest rates and rents and things like that would constantly go down to the point where, yeah, probably would hit zero. So anyway, I just want to preface by saying I'm not so much looking for the feedback from the former group, more from the latter. So, all right, let's bridge the gap. I think the first building block is affirming individualism. And what I mean by that is, let's start by asking, can an individual, rather than a group, can an individual have a legitimate claim to a piece of land or capital and have it be for exclusive use? So in other words, is it legitimate for an individual to build or legitimately buy or trade, a house on a piece of land that he or she resides in, and is he under any obligation to allow others to stay there too? I'd say no. This is your house. You don't have to let other people, get that corner of the floor, or maybe you have a spare bedroom that you just have your office or something like that. No, we would say that is, your personal property. That is your personal. You have an exclusive claim to it. So, and you are allowed to use force to defend it from the trespasses of others, just as you have legitimacy to defend your body with force against the trespasses of others. So, I think we would all agree on that. Now that we, agree that on the same page that individuals can legitimately have an exclusive claim to a piece of land or capital, the next question is, well, what determines a legitimate claim? Obviously, people claim intellectual property is property. I would say anyone who is a consistent propertarian would say that's not the case, and I know mutualists are against intellectual property, so we agree that's not legitimate. The U.S. goes to the moon, plants a flag, and says, mine. I think we'd all agree that that's not a legitimate claim either. So what does determine a legitimate claim? I think we need to acknowledge that resources exist in two states. One is a state of nature, unclaimed, unused, etc. And the other is post-state of nature. It has been claimed, it has been developed, it has been worked. So when things start with the state of nature, I would say that homesteading is the most universal way of going about establishing a claim. And homesteading is strictly tied to occupancy and use. Awesome. So, no disagreement so far. Afterward, when things are post-state of nature, you have your towns, you have your homes built, you have your farms, your factories, etc. How do you go from there? Well, when things are claimed, I would say, just voluntary interaction. If you want to sell something, you sell it. That's what determines, or you trade it. That's what determines a legitimate claim. In other words, no theft, no theft. Now, I've heard mutualists say that no, that is not legitimate. We need to stay with occupancy and use as, determining the legitimate claim for even when things are developed in post-state of nature. Well, I understand coming out of state of nature, or when things exist in a state of nature, homesteading, that sounds legit. I don't think it can be done any better, more fair. You can't come up with a more universally applicable rule that is equal for all humankind. But my main concern when things are outside of a state of nature, and we apply occupancy and use, is, okay, So if I have a house or a car, let's say I leave my house for a week to go on vacation, or I park my car outside a mall or something to go shopping, I'm not occupying or using that truck or that house anymore when I leave it. So does that mean that I have no claim to it at this point? It's up for grabs. Anyone else can just take my truck and drive off, or my house, and that's now theirs. And now it's up to me to, when I come out from shopping, I got to find another unclaimed or unused truck or car to haul my stuff back. I don't think it's. I know you guys don't think it'll happen that way, but I mean, come on. I think it's a legitimate concern. A legitimate question to ask. And when I did ask you guys that, the response I got was, Alex, it wouldn't be like that. That's who would want to live like that? The community would set standards that are reasonable. And that response was not very satisfactory to me. That sounded mildly statist. It's like you're saying this thing that's outside of me now has a claim as to what goes on with my life. They can determine how long I can go on vacation for. It didn't feel right. And I was still concerned, and I was worried. Well, yeah, I guess this is mutualism. I don't think it's right, and I don't think we can meet eye to eye. Then a couple of months went by, and I had an epiphany regarding this, community standard setting idea, and it hit me when I thought of this parallel example. I work for a company that makes widgets, thousands and thousands and millions of widgets. And like most things that are manufactured, a very small percentage of them will come out of the manufacturing process with a manufacturer's defect, and they won't work properly. So when our customers say, hey, this one's defective, it's not working, we say, okay. We give them the means to send the widget back to us. We either repair it or replace it and ship it back to them. And then we're good. Now, every once in a while, we ship a widget back to one of our customers, and it's undeliverable for whatever reason. It comes back to us. Okay, so call them with the only phone number that they gave us or the email that they gave us. Hey, we tried to send this back to you. Came back to us. We haven't heard from you, and we might even try to send it out again. And again, it comes back undeliverable. So we sent what we call unclaimed property letters. Now, after, I think it's 100 days, we stop trying. We stop holding it in our warehouse space. We stop setting it aside. We deem it abandoned, and we either recycle it or we can do other things with it. This makes total sense to me. Even though I would say that an individual has a legitimate claim to this item, even if they're not in direct possession, just as I would say the person who parks his car somewhere still has a legitimate claim to it. No one can take it just because he's not using it or in possession of it. I totally get why the respective community, the people who live by the plot where this guy just parked his car and just left it for eternity, or the company that is paying for warehouse space to hold this, it makes total sense that the respective community at some point would stop investing their energy in respecting this guy's claim to this piece of property. Now, I know this is a little different from when you think of how it worked with a factory or a piece of land, but I think versus this little widget. But I think the principle is what I'm trying to highlight to show how I came to understand your position, where you're coming from, and I think it's valid. So, and I think what it really boils down to is, the mutualist and propertarian positions claim that when resources exist in a state of nature, the justified claim to exclusive use is determined by occupancy and use, or what I would call homesteading. Now, the mutualist position concerning the justified claim to exclusive use of resources that are post-homestead or post-state of nature is guided by, but not exclusively determined by, occupancy and use. In other words, no, it's not immediate, but it's a guideline, Well, that's kind of what we keep in mind when we think of what's reasonable. The propertarian position is that, once homesteaded, the justified claim to exclusive use is determined by the principle of voluntarism, not directly to occupancy and use. However long a community will expend its energy respecting that claim, before it's deemed abandoned is, that will be determined by, a certain community. I would say what I would call the development of common law within a community. I think that's probably the same way of saying, community standard setting. So we have this, middle ground. Mutualists, they kind of push back from the immediate. So it's not immediate, but, we'll give you some extra time, so to speak. And the propertarians, such as myself, say, don't assume that anything is in perpetuity. Say, no, it's not forever. It's, you do need to keep, I guess, using it to some degree. You can't just ditch it. You can't just leave. You can't have a house that you never go to. It sits there for 50 years and, blah, 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 etc. So, I get that. We have this middle ground that there is no, I think, universal principle that can be applied, like 100 days or, 5 years for land, or, it's that would all, whatever number you put on it is arbitrary. So I think, both propertarians and mutualists can agree that it would be left to the development of common law within various communities. And I'm sure it'll vary, a little between community and community, but I think we can agree that that's how things will develop. I hope, I'm really excited by this idea, because if it's sound, it means we're a lot closer than we thought. And I think it means we can focus, rather than attacking the filters through which, ANCAPs, propertarians versus mutualists understand issues and how the path they traveled to get to liberty, and maybe the rhetoric they use. Rather than attacking that, we can acknowledge each other's filters, different life perspectives, but that, we both came to liberty, and disregard the vulgar libertarians, disregard the vulgar socialists who just really haven't applied their ideas consistently enough to get to the, liberty. And I hope we can now focus on, true enemies, the state and the state allies, those who facilitate privilege and the illegitimate claims to resources and wealth that act to the detriment and exploitation of the rest of us. So, hey, let me know what you think. Take care, guys.